From the great American Central Plains and the rolling prairies of Kansas, I bid all of you warm greetings, wherever you are in space and time. Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Midnight on the Prairie with me, your host, Kevin Kelly. And I have to say, my friends, I am quite confident you will be glad to have tuned in. Tonight's show will be in two parts, and the topic is out-of-body experiences, which are commonly referred to as OBEs. So what do we mean by OBEs and out-of-body experiences? Well, it's a phenomenon in which people report that they leave their physical body to travel in the astral plane. And our esteemed guest to guide us in our journey to explore this fascinating topic is none other than the one and only Mr. Preston Dennett. Now, he's a man I imagine many of you have heard of and followed over the years. Indeed, he has written more than 30 nonfiction books and more than 100 articles about UFOs and the paranormal. And his research has been presented in the LA Times, the LA Daily News, the Dallas Morning News, and several other newspapers. In addition, over the years, he has appeared on numerous radio and TV programs, including, Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell, as well as Coast to Coast and Ancient Aliens. So as you can see, my friends, we are all in for quite a ride tonight. And I'll be back for part one of my talk with Preston right after this.
Unique jewelry is what sets your outfit apart from others. It can make an everyday outfit shine, but too often the jewelry people wear isn't really noticed because it does not stand out. I want to tell you about a family-run online jewelry store called By Rock Studio that crafts unique, one-of-a-kind beaded jewelry that will be noticed and that you'll love to wear. It features everything from necklaces and earrings to bracelets and anklets. Rox's jewelry is so unique it caught the eye of Sports Illustrated, who went on to adorn its swimsuit models with Rox's work for the May 2023 swimsuit edition. So head on over to byrockstudio.com to find your own amazing jewelry pieces and shine. Again, that's byrockstudio.com. And thank you, Rox, for your support of Midnight on the Prairie.
Well, welcome to Midnight on the Prairie, Preston. I'm just so honored to have you join us here on the show today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So, as I mentioned when I reached out to you out of the blue a while back, I recall so well hearing you on Art Bell's show, Midnight in the Desert, in July of 2015. It was a very warm, humid night here in Kansas, as you might imagine, in July. And it was dark, so there was that magical element. I was just fascinated and inspired. I mean, those are the two words that come to mind to probably for the first time in my life really hear about the concept of out-of-body experiences. And the funny thing is, Preston, I honestly wanted so badly during that show to talk to you. And now here we are, 9 years later, and we're talking.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm honored. Thank you.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you. Well, the obvious starting point, I'm sure you've been asked this many times, is, for the listeners and for myself, what is an out-of-body experience? And I think the related question that's always been in my head is, you hear the term astral projection as well. First of all, do you kind of equate those things as being the same thing?
I do. Yeah, I think they're different terms for the same thing. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, an out-of-body experience is, simply put, the experience of seeing yourself separate from your physical body. We all have what's often called a dream body, perhaps an astral body, a soul. It goes by different names depending on which culture. But yeah, you can actually leave your physical body and you are completely awake. This is not a dream. It can be dreamlike in the beginning, certainly. But no, this astral body can do all kinds of things the physical body can't, in terms of walking through walls or flying or going to what we call the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't age. It's something we all actually do too.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I'll definitely get to that because it's one of the aspects I think that surprises me so much that seems to be what I guess what I would call astral projectors. Is that a term that makes any sense? Is that
Sure, yeah.
yeah,
It
that they
works.
will tell you that it's something that we all experience, and I think, and I'll get to this too, that it's a question of remembering it. Is kind of what I take from what you've talked about. Um, so here it is now, 2024. That was back in 2015, of course, when you were on the show with Art Bell. And I think I know the answer to this question, but have you continued to astral project and travel out of body?
Oh yeah. Yeah, once you learn how to do it, it doesn't ever really go away. I will say I've gone months or almost a year or two without doing it at all because
Interesting.
life sort of overwhelms you. I actually got worried. I'm like, I wonder if I've lost the ability to do this. But no, I got back into it, and it kind of comes in waves, I guess you might say.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something I vigorously pursued after reading about it. It
Right.
didn't just happen to me spontaneously. Well, in a way it did. There
Yeah.
was kind of a pathway towards it.
How did it start? When was the first time that you feel like you had one, and was it intentional?
It was pretty much.
Okay.
Uh, I, s- there was a kind of a long pathway to it. I was 19 years old when my mom passed away. She was 49, so pretty tragic and
Mm.
unexpected.
Yeah. So sorry.
Yeah, thank you. But that was a while ago. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I was pretty young. So was she. It was unexpected, and I was very, very close to her. I'm five of six kids,
Mm.
so it was a huge shock for our family. And it was about 2 weeks after she passed that we were at the service. I was with the whole family and friends and such. And my dad was driving up in the car. We were at a family friend's house. And I looked in the front seat, the front passenger seat, and there was my mom. And I'm like, well, I
Oh.
must be losing my mind
Yeah.
because ghosts aren't real, of course, is what I was thinking.
Right.
I didn't believe in it, anything, not ghosts, UFOs, life after death,
Oh, interesting.
anything paranormal.
Okay.
So I thought, well, I must be really sad because I am clearly hallucinating.
Right.
Now, of course, in hindsight, I realized I was probably seeing her spirit. That's what I believe.
Right.
But it was real interesting because, my mom had a really good posture. She sat very well. She was very elegant and regal in her
Right.
posture.
Right.
And I'm looking at her, and she was definitely that way, with her hands folded across her lap and her
Wow.
back straight. And drove right up next to me, my dad did. And I'm looking at her. She's just kind of staring ahead. She didn't turn and look at me. This was full color, totally solid.
Like three
And
dimensional and everything else. I mean, just like
oh,
as
yeah,
if it's a living human sitting there. Obviously.
right.
Yeah.
And I am, of course, looking to either side of me because I've got people on either side of me.
Hmm.
And no, they're not seeing anything, so I'm not going to say anything. In fact, I kind of made a vow right then and there. I'm like, well, I'm never telling anyone this because this
Right.
sounds crazy.
Right.
Which, of course, I've broken that vow. But
Apparently.
but yeah, I mean, that was kind of the first step. I'm like, wow, what was that? I must, have hallucinated that. But it was in the months that followed, not initially, several months later, I started having these very vivid dreams, what you might call lucid dreams.
Right.
'Cause I thought I was awake. I would be lying in bed and someone would walk in my room and I'd sit up awake, I thought, and it was my mom.
Hmm.
And I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? You can't possibly be here. You're dead.
Yeah.
And she would kind of just shake her head. She didn't really speak, but she would look at me and smile and let me know, everything's fine. You're fine. I'm fine.
Wow. What a
Don't
gift.
worry. Yeah, it was really vivid. And I would just be so shocked. And then she'd like walk out and I would jump up in bed thinking I was awake and finding out, nope, that was actually a dream.
Oh,
And it was so confusing because I knew on some level that that was really her
right.
just by the quality of her presence. I don't know how else to describe it,
Hmm.
but I mean, you can almost smell her, you can,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and then, I'd wake up, I'd be like, well, okay, that was just a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at a little bit of a crossroads there, a quandary. Like, is this real or not? It
Right.
can't be.
Yeah,
Can't be
because your
real. There's
rational
no such
side,
thing.
we tend to rationalize away things that we should probably pay more attention to, and I think about that in the context of people who say they've never had anything, paranormal happen to them. They're probably just rationalizing it away.
Exactly. Yeah, I found that out. Absolutely. I was doing it. So, and I
Yeah,
certainly wasn't going to talk about it. Well,
right.
I mean, I did tell people, I dreamt about mom last night. I didn't tell them that I thought it was her
Yeah,
because I wasn't sure. But that got me interested in dreams and lucid dreaming.
sure.
And I was going to the bookstores at this point, and I found Robert Monroe's book.
Hmm.
Now, anyone who knows anything about out-of-body experiences has heard of Robert Monroe.
Absolutely.
He's written, yeah, he's written 3 books, The Gateway Institute, where he teaches people how to do it.
Hmm.
Well, he's passed on now, but at any rate,
Well, he may
I
still
read
be
his
teaching
first.
people. Who knows, right?
Yeah, well, one of these days I'm going to try and find him
Yeah, there you
out of
go.
body.
Oh, I love that. If so, I want an update, please.
That would be
I want
awesome.
to interject real quick because this is perfect because the next thing I was going to ask you about was kind of this differentiation between a lucid dream and an out of body experience. And first, I think it's important to acknowledge what a lucid dream would be. And I think that it's safe to say that would be a dream in which you're aware you're dreaming and then also potentially realize you have the ability to control what's going to happen. Is that a fair
Yeah,
definition?
potentially, because you're not necessarily able to do that, but
Okay.
you are awake within the dream.
Okay.
And awake as you are, during waking consciousness.
Right. And
And
so in your book, Out of Body Exploring, I found a very fascinating section to be where you really kind of did what you're doing now, where you talked about and tried to differentiate, but also show the overlapping. And you actually quoted some other people who are involved with out of body experiences. And if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of read from that to help frame that conversation and maybe get your comments. Does that sound good?
yeah,
So you say, according to Robert Bruce, advanced astral traveler and author of Astral Dynamics, and this is a quote now, a lucid dream is a genuine type of out of body experience, although the dimensional gate traveled through to achieve it is best thought of as being internal. That's the first one. Then you have Robert Peterson writes, the scenery is artificial in a lucid dream, but is real in an out of body experience. Regardless of what out of body experiences and lucid dreams are, I believe they are two separate phenomena. I do believe that occasionally people can confuse one experience for the other, and granted, it's very difficult to tell the difference in some cases, kind of like what you were saying. And then finally, William Bowman writes, and here's a quote, one of the best ways to initiate an out of body experience is to become aware or lucid within a dream. And then you go on to say that, in fact, during an out of body experience, he was told that lucid dreams can be considered a higher form of an out of body experience as they take place in a higher vibrational dimension, meaning the astral dimension. So, yeah, thoughts about that?
yeah. Well, I've certainly thought about it. I think there's some truth to that. Having had both and been doing this for decades, I do think a lucid dream, you are out of body.
Okay.
But what you're basically doing is mentally projecting your environment around you. It's essentially a hallucination.
Hmm.
So you are out of body, but you're not perceiving the environment around you. You're creating your own environment.
Wow.
And you can do this on high levels of the astral plane or right there in your bedroom. But yeah, I think some people say, oh, it's an inferior form. Some say, oh no, it's a superior form. No, they're completely different. Uh, I think that they're essentially the same thing. It's just how you're perceiving it.
Hmm.
Because when you are having a lucid dream and you turn that into an astral projection experience, it's really interesting to see all your mental projections kind of fade away, and you realize, oh, I'm not where I thought I was.
Yeah.
Which could be at work or in a forest or what have you. You're actually floating above your bed in your room,
Right.
or you're on the other side, or wherever you might happen to be, astrally speaking. So they're pretty much the same thing in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot of discussion about this, a lot
Yeah.
of debate.
Right.
But if you're lucid dreaming, you are there. I mean, you are having an out of body experience.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, we all are, but you're at the step of being able to remember it and do this in a fully conscious way.
Yeah. I think that you've said that essentially um, the astral plane is governed by thought, is kind of what you've just now said as well. What occurred to me when I think about that you're creating your own reality in a sense. You know, we hear so much about multiverse, right? Multiple dimensions, and the fact that theoretically, in quantum physics kind of theory, that anything you can imagine, pretty much at all, uh, is a reality somewhere else in another dimension. Like I remember hearing a show on NPR many years ago, probably 20 years ago, where there was some experts in that field, and they said this. And I actually emailed one of the guests on the show, and I said, "So you saying that there's a universe where I'm a walnut out in the middle of space and nothing else exists out in the universe?" And her response was, "Well, yes, if it's something that can be imagined, that exists as a universe." I don't know if you agree with that or not, but what strikes me is there seems to be an overlap here, because I wonder, is it possible that in the astral projection out of body experience, you are traveling, when you create these other universes or these other worlds, these other realities, are you maybe going to another universe where that is the reality?
I'm not sure if I'm willing to go that far.
Okay. Yeah. I know
uh,
that's crazy, isn't
but
it?
yeah, I mean, once you start doing this, you realize how puny we really are and how little we actually know. uh, and it's a continual learning curve. It really, really is. Because, we're here in the third dimension and we're struggling to understand here. And you go there and it's much vaster. And there's dimension upon dimension.
Hmm.
It's really interesting because, here we have our physical body, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to complicate things, but there's, according to, Eastern schools of thought, there's not only the physical body, but the etheric body,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially our aura, but then the astral body and the mental body and the Buddhic and the Atmic, and well, they kind of outline it into 7 different sections,
Right.
is one way of putting it. And I think there's some truth to that. Uh, you know, the astral body is sometimes called the occult body or the desire body or
Oh.
the emotional body,
Oh.
because boy, when you are out of body, your emotions come roaring back. Any repressions or suppressions. So you start finding yourself dealing with all kinds of really strong emotions. It can be fear, excitement, gluttony, lust, anger. And I dealt with all of those. But also, yeah, the mental body, because that saying, thoughts are things. Uh,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
People have said that many times. And you're like, well, they're very kind of wispy. You don't see them.
Right.
Well, when you're out of body, oh, you suddenly realize how true that is, because your thoughts are like a laser cannon.
Wow. So
And
so things can shift on a dime, and suddenly, because that kind of sounds a little bit like a dream once again, right? Where in dreams suddenly things just shift in a very strange way from where they were, and we don't even necessarily even notice it unless it's a lucid dream. But so you're saying that you could be experiencing one situation in an out of body experience, but once you think of something else, it's going to shift completely to that?
yeah, we all have kind of a stream of consciousness,
Uh-huh.
and that we're doing it right now. We're essentially dreaming while we're awake. It's our stream of consciousness.
Right.
And when we go to sleep, we kind of fall right into that, and all these images and thoughts that we're thinking manifest as dreams, as projections, hallucinations.
Right.
And so that's why dreams can be really, changeable and bizarre and go from one thing to another real quickly,
Right.
because they're basically your thoughts manifesting around you
Mm-hmm.
to some extent.
You,
Uh,
you know, it almost sounds a little, I mean, uncomfortable to me to think that that would happen in an out of body experience, right? That it sounds chaotic a little bit. And as far as the emotional part, especially, if these things that are part of you already on a much lower level come out in full force and color, as you've described, it almost like you'd have to learn how to control that or deal with that. Does that make sense?
yeah, and it's a great place to do it. I mean, we're all here dealing with issues anyway.
Right.
uh, but the thing is, going out of body it's totally safe. It's not physical. You can't get hurt. You're already doing it. It's as safe as sleeping. It's an absolutely natural human condition.
Hmm.
But when you wake up in it and you find yourself, because when you go out of body, it can be, like I said, very emotional.
Right.
Some people experience incredible fear. There's
Hmm.
almost this emotional feedback loop, which mounts into pure terror.
Oh, great.
And if you think of a monster, I mean, it can appear, or whatever. I mean,
Wow. So you think about
whatever you think can
dinosaurs and maybe
appear,
there's a T-Rex all of a sudden, maybe.
right? And it can be disconcerting to say the least.
Right, that's the word.
Uh,
Well, and this reminds me of very much vibrantly of something that was kind of I found it as a very humorous back and forth between you and Art Bell during that show. I'm sure you probably recall it too, where he kept going back to the issue of is it safe? And he would say things like you're not doing a good PR message for the concept of trying this. You probably recall that. And
yeah.
right. And you mentioned things such as I think there was you knew of at least one case where a female who had been astro projecting and had died, and the question was, had something happened during that projection that caused it? And you mentioned some kind of entity grabbing your legs, and then finally that you'd run into, let's just say, not friendly entities, you know. Um, so any updates on that? And it sounds like you still are very confirmed about the idea that it's safe.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've been doing it for a very long time. I've talked to a lot of people. I've interviewed them. I've taught people how to do it. And I've bought every darn book on this subject I can find. And I've scoured the literature looking for any real dangers to it. And I found the opposite. Honest to God, I've documented now, and I'm going to write about this. I already have,
Ah,
really, for Fate magazine, but 20 some separate cases of people who've been physically healed of all manner of illness. Everything from, you know, chronic disease like sarcoidosis. That happened to Bruce Moan. He cured himself.
wow.
Robert Monroe
Hmm.
healed himself, as did Marilyn Hughes, uh, many, Albert Taylor. I think he had MS, was able to improve his condition markedly.
Hmm.
But colds, flus, cuts, heart disease, no, no, it's not dangerous. I'm telling you, we're
Okay.
already doing it.
Right.
Uh, the dangers are way, way overblown. And I think some of them were put forth to sort of stop people from doing it because it's such a powerful experience.
Right.
There's no danger of getting lost or locked out of your body or going too far out or getting possessed or anything like that. And the benefits are incredible. Not only healing, but you get to have all these adventures.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, we're basically, well, we experience being unconscious for about a third of our life. We're not, by the way. Even if you're not remembering it, you're fully conscious
Hmm.
when you're sleeping.
Hmm.
You're out on the other side doing all kinds of stuff, having fun, planning your day, exploring, talking to people,
Wow.
and you can remember this.
Right.
And you can have all kinds of adventures that are so much fun. I mean, flying, visiting the other side and meeting deceased loved ones,
Right.
going to healing temples and learning centers and talking to what we would call enlightened masters.
Hmm.
I mean, the stuff you can do
Well, and I'm gonna,
is off the charts.
and that's reassuring, right? And it's been my feeling that what you're saying is exactly the case. I guess if you have these unpleasant experiences while you're out of body, you just somehow reconcile that when you return to the physical body, and it doesn't seem so bad. Is that? I mean, how? In other words, would a
Yeah,
person decide they don't want to do it anymore because they're so scared, or maybe something happens so that you still feel comfortable doing it, or what do you think?
yeah. Well, the only real dangers I could find is, yeah, it can be scary, certainly.
Yeah.
And it can be addicting as well. And once you do it and you realize how great this is, it it consumes a lot of your attention because this is something you definitely want to pursue. But no, I don't see any. The only real obstacles are, yeah, fear for sure.
Hmm.
Because people are like, wow, that sounds so scary. And it can be. I mean, you find yourself out of body, it's really a shock the
Right.
first few times at least.
Yeah. Like, have
And
I
for some
died?
people,
Yeah.
yeah, well, that happened to me on the third time out. I'm like, oh no. I basically woke up. I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I? And kind of cleared my head and and looked down, and I saw myself lying in bed. This was, in the middle of the night, so it's quite dark. I saw myself under the covers,
Uh-huh.
and I got this cold dread. I mean, the fear swept over me in a way I've never felt before here on Earth.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, just the kind of unbelievable terror. I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm dead. I've died.
Yeah.
What have I done? I'm dead.
I blew it.
I immediately dived back into my body, and it was a weird feeling, kind of filling it up and wiggling into like a suit of armor, kind of.
Oh,
And I sat up in bed and almost forgot, honestly, because it is all about memory.
yeah.
But it came rushing back to me, and my emotions went 180 degrees. I was ecstatic. And yeah, the first few times I did it, the second I popped out, I was so overjoyed. I mean, I've never felt the emotion is so strong.
Just like ecstasy, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And that strong emotion will pull you back in,
Yeah.
almost always. But
And
yeah, the only real obstacles are fear, laziness, because people don't want to do the work that it takes
mhm.
or won't, and skepticism. They don't think they can do it. Like it's the realm of yogis or something, or
Right.
saints and stuff. But no, no, it's not. Anyone can do this. The benefits are unbelievable. There's no real danger.
Hmm.
You're not physical, so
Yeah.
you're not going to get hurt.
Right.
It can be scary. Yeah, I have encountered hostile entities uh, more, recently because I was curious. I would go to some of the lower realms at
Really?
some point. I'm like, people talk about hell. I'm like, well, is there a hell? I want to explore that.
Yeah.
I think I'm good at it enough now where I can see what's, in the lower realms, I guess is how I would put it.
Well, what happened? If you don't mind sharing when you've attempted those types of downward travels.
Yeah, well, the lowest I would say that I went, because it gets really uncomfortable and it's very dark,
Okay.
because I'm not, what I would call the garden realms or the heavenly realms. It's pure light. It's composed of this unbelievably sparkly, glittering, divine light. There's no shadows, none.
Wow. Interesting.
E- Everything's made of light, and it's so beautiful. It's indescribably beautiful.
Hmm.
The reds and the blues and the greens are really vivid in a way like, God, I don't even know how to describe it, like high definition TV,
Right.
kind of, but times that by 1,000. It makes the real world look pale in comparison.
I was going to say that's the impression I get is that our reality pales in comparison to what you're able to see as you travel into that other realm.
Yeah, it because that is the real world. This is, I mean, it's real here. Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a matrix or anything like people are sometimes
Oh, a
talking about. It's
hologram or
real.
whatever. Yeah.
No, no. It's absolutely real. But that the other side is our home. That's where we come from. That's where we're going. And in a way, astral projection is a misnomer because the truth is we're projecting down here into the physical third dimension from our true home.
Now that's fascinating.
So it's really kind of a wrong way of looking at it to call it astral projection. It's more of a return or a visit back to who we really are.
I wonder why that exists as a reality then. I wonder what, I don't know, if, talk about God or whatever, if we're created or that seems so nonsensical in a way, doesn't it? That this situation that we seem to spend most of our time experiencing is not the real the real experience.
Yeah, I think there's a combination of factors that have led us to feel separate and not understand that we are truly immortal, eternal beings. Uh, but once you have that out of body experience, everything changes. Just one, and you know that this is not only real, but there is life after death.
Right.
And
The veil is lifted.
yeah, I mean, it is literally like being woken up when you're already awake. And
I
yeah,
like
there are
that.
lower realms. I went exploring down because, Marilyn Hughes,
Uh-huh.
one of my idols on this subject, because she's written a bunch of books and talked about, there are lower realms and you can visit them. Okay, well, let's try this. And I think the first time I did more of a remote viewing kind of experience, which is sort of an inferior type or a different type of out of body experience where you don't fully go out of body necessarily, but you project your consciousness and you can look at things just about anywhere. There's a lot of literature on, of course, astral projection, but remote viewing as well.
Mhm.
And I was sort of poking around there because I didn't want to go. It's scary.
Yeah, you want to, but don't want to, right? Kind of. My son, when he was a kid, would love to watch Scooby Doo. It scared him to death, but he would peek through his fingers to watch it. You know.
Yeah, well, the first time I did that, I'm like, wow, this is, dark. There was people there who are literally in agony. They are, screaming. Some of them, a lot of them are
Oh,
really depressed. They're
wow.
very angry, just in one way or another, very self-absorbed and in their own private hell.
Oh my God.
And and as you go, you go there and try to visit them, they won't even look at you. If you try to stand in front of them, they turn their head. I mean, this is how self-absorbed they are. We make our own hell, is what I'm trying to say.
Uh-huh. That's what they're kind of visualizing in a way.
Yeah. If you, pass on and you've been a bad person and you know it, you're your own worst judge.
Oh,
So
wow.
it takes people sometimes a while to really wake up to like, you know what, I am worthy. I can go, because more recently, this is something a lot of astral projectors do. And if you get good at this, you're gonna do it. You bring people over to the other side who are struggling, because there's a lot of earthbound souls
Yeah.
who just don't fully understand that perhaps they don't even know they're dead, or they just don't feel worthy of going to the other side, or they're afraid of how they'll be judged.
Yes.
But I'd say the lowest I ever went was I was just kind of like, let's do this. And I went down, 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 because that's kind of, you just set the intention. We all have spirit guides, by the way, who lead us around. And I'm kind of the guy who's like, leave me alone. I want to do this myself. I I often find myself, I don't see any spirit guide. Uh, I
So you
have,
don't know really who this guide is, if it potentially is a deceased loved one, or
for the most part, yeah, I feel like I'm out there alone doing it.
okay,
I learned that no, I'm being observed or I'm guided for sure.
which is
Uh,
reassuring, I think.
yeah, if you're going to do this, you don't have to worry because your loved ones are there. We all have people who basically whose job it is to help guide us through our third dimensional life. And if we start doing this, boy, they become excited because you're waking up and it makes their job a lot easier as a quote spirit guide.
Right.
But yeah, I went down, 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 and I found myself in this very dark place, and all these people came rushing up to me. The first thing they did was start flattering me in this overly kind of
Oh.
obsequious way, like, "Oh, you're so great." And
Ooh.
whenever anyone's doing this, you're like looking at them. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure. Why are you flattering me? What do you want from me?
Right.
And when I didn't buy into it, I'm like, yeah, yeah, whatever. They started to get angry and they transformed into your classic demonic figure with, just really ugly faces that are almost animalistic.
Mm.
Um, because to a certain extent, you take on the features of your emotions.
Right.
So if you're a really angry, ugly, vicious person, you can manifest that in your appearance.
Wow.
And these were, yeah, they, I mean, they started to get really angry. Now, normally, whenever I would confront a hostile entity, they say, "Oh, I'll just project love and light." Yeah. I mean, the first few times I've met hostile entities, I'm like, "Goodbye, I'm going back. This is too scary. I don't know what I'm dealing with. I'm a beginner."
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
at that
okay.
point, I was pretty experienced. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hold my ground. And I
Mm.
surrounded myself with white light and I projected love. And it created this kind of bubble around me, a barrier that they started running up against and trying to break in. They were
Hmm.
clawing and gnashing their teeth. This is a group of, people.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming they're people. People who made the decision to be evil.
Yeah.
And I'm
Gosh.
thinking naively, if I project love, and maybe they'll see that there's a better way. No, they've made their decision. So I wasn't helping them at all, I realized, because they were just getting really vicious and angry and trying so hard to get at me. And they couldn't. And that made them even angrier. And
Right.
I felt totally safe at this point because,
Right.
I was able to just, I don't know, I've just learned how to do it, right?
Right.
Uh, So I'm like, well, this is not working. I'm just gonna go up to the higher realms right now, where
Yeah.
all the fun is,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, you can
Right.
explore the physical world all you want, but at some point you're gonna slip to the other side because that's the natural realm, the natural environment of
Right.
the astral body. So yeah, that was the
Okay.
lowest I went, but
Well,
I worked my way down there. It was
and I'm just glad that
level
we're having
after
this
level.
conversation. You clearly came back, right? And you, it sounds like the kind of thing a person maybe want to do until they've experienced doing the process of astral projection a while, to have the confidence to not only be able to go there, but then to stay there longer than just a millisecond when they start to see these creatures, So, you know,
Yeah, I did read one account of a lady who said, "Oh, I was trapped. They trapped me for a while." I'm like, "Yeah, well, here you are, and you came back, so I guess you're fine."
right. Your show on Art Bell, that led to me exploring it more and trying to understand it and trying to experience it. And if you don't mind, I want to tell you about my efforts. And really, there have been 30 or so times in my life when I've really tried and had, I think, the beginnings of it, but I don't know that I've ever been able to complete that. So,
Right,
yeah. And they definitely occur at night when I'm semi awake, laying in bed, but fully conscious, aware that I'm laying in bed, right? But it's that kind of between asleep and awake that I think we all have at times.
yep,
And I'll suddenly feel, I think the best way of saying it is kind of lightheaded, mentally, like there's a shift in my brain almost where it just feels lighter or, yeah, just lighter. And like I say, I'm aware that I'm in bed. And then I begin hearing a mix, usually a mix of loud clashing sounds, even though I know that I'm laying in a very quiet bedroom. And that's the real tip off that I always know that, okay, here we go, right? And
right.
the things I've heard are very similar. It seems like every time there'll be like a train clacking down the tracks with its engine making noise too. And then conversations like you're in a restaurant that's busy, banging and clanging of pots and pans, wind. In one case, I heard a cat meow, and I immediately felt confident it was a cat of mine that had passed, named Shadow, who then proceeded to walk across me, as he would often do when I laid in bed, right? And then the other real two distinct things were one time I heard my father's voice, and he had passed many years before, and he simply said my name. He said, Kevin Kelly, Kevin. Then there was another time when I visualized, and this is, you said something about bubbles. You protected yourself in a bubble when you were in that lower realm. It was amazing. It was a crowd of people, but there were two bubbles, and inside the bubbles were each of my parents individually.
Oh, wow.
I walked up to the one where my mother was, and I was standing right there looking into her face. She looked just as she had looked pretty much when she passed back in 1994. She was 72. And she was looking at me and she said, Kevin, you look so much older than you were. And that was it. I came back and I kind of woke up. All of this happens, and I'm trying to really leave my body as I hear these sounds and so forth, but I don't feel like I've had any success getting to that next stage. So what do you think about
Right.
what would that be that I experienced, do you think?
Oh, that's an OBE for sure.
Really?
I mean, you're there. Yeah,
Wow.
if you just pursue it, and you reached you know, gone through the hard part, is becoming lucid and experiencing exactly what you're talking about.
Hmm.
Because, what I always tell people, it's basically a 3-4 step process.
Okay.
You want to physically relax till you start to feel heaviness or lightness or vertigo or movement, or ultimately what you want to feel is the vibratory state,
Right.
just sort of anything from a mild vibration to a severe electric shock type of feeling, like water's rushing through you, and those sounds you're talking about are very well known to astral projectors,
That's kind of what I've
especially,
read. Yeah.
yeah, especially in the beginning. I've kind of bypassed that at this point, and I think most people will, but they're called exit distractions. And sometimes you're
Ooh.
actually just sensing what's actually out there, whether it's, your loved ones or your pets or someone walking through.
Yeah.
But it can sound exactly what you're describing. I've heard all of those. A
Really?
train rushing through your bedroom, or the space shuttle taking off right outside your window, or
Yeah, it's
furniture
very,
at
very
home.
strange, isn't it? And have you had that happen in your earlier attempts then, where there's just this clashing of sounds, and you're like, what's going on?
Oh yeah. I went right down every list and all the books. I'm like, I've heard that. Yeah. Pots clanging, furniture moving, banging,
Hmm.
swearing, vicious swearing, people talking. I mean, you name it. Uh,
Wow. So it's
roaring
distraction.
sounds.
What do you mean by that? That's intriguing.
I think there's a couple of things going on there. It's partly your own thoughts manifesting. It's partly,
Hmm.
the denizens of the lower realms, because we're right up against it here on the physical plane, is right next to sort of some of these lower realms where there's a lot of earthbound souls,
Hmm.
and it can be, actual spirits coming down and saying, we're here, hi, hello, it's us. But often I think mostly it's you who's doing it,
Hmm.
and as you kind of move up to the higher dimension, uh, there, it, there's that roaring sound. You're lifting up into it. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, I mean, now I've bypassed it. You can feel like stretching feelings and whooshing and jerking, and not only hearing stuff, but you can feel it as well.
Right.
And it can be very strong. And might pull people away from it. They're like, well, that was scary and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You
That's what
can
I feel
have
like has
extreme
happened to me.
thirst.
Well, gosh, I'm really pleased to hear you think that what I've actually had happen would be a version of an out of body experience then, because my feeling has always been that since I don't like see my own body, or I don't seem to be able to just travel anywhere I want to go, it's more like I'm just there all of a sudden, like with this crowd of people and my parents in the bubbles, because it never goes very long, and I get pulled back, and whether it be fear or exhilaration, it seems like triggers it just ending much earlier than I want it to.
Yeah. In the beginning, it can be very dreamlike for people, and you're not necessarily going to lay down and feel yourself lift up and out. You might just wake up. In fact, that's more likely for beginners.
Oh, hmm.
You wake up and you have a very vivid dream of meeting a deceased loved one, or being in an area that felt really real, or suddenly finding yourself being whooshed back into bed, and bam, you're like, it's called repercussion. You're like, suddenly you wake up real quickly.
Yeah.
Like, what just happened?
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, how it began was I was meditating. I was trying to do Robert Monroe's exercises that he outlined in his book,
Hmm.
Far Journeys, or no, Out of Body Journey. I think that's his first book. Uh, and he says you basically just want to relax and visualize and do affirmations. That's, I'm shortening it.
Right.
But in essence, it's really all about meditation and relaxation. And so I was doing that. And I only had to do it for about a month and a half.
I know that people out there want me to ask this already, and that is, how does one intentionally trigger an out of body experience, and also how does one remember it?
Yeah, I mean, again, anyone can do it. There's no special qualifications.
Hmm.
This is a natural condition, and it is all about memory. So ultimately, what you really want to do is start doing dream work, trying real hard to remember your dreams. And there's various ways of doing it. Keeping a dream book next to your bed, a diary,
Hmm.
allowing a little bit of extra time to sleep, perhaps. Uh, when you wake up, don't jump out of bed. Immediately just lay there, don't move. If you can possibly not move, you've got a much better chance of remembering what you're doing at night,
Hmm.
because you are out there doing all kinds of things.
All of us are all
Just
the
lay,
time, right?
oh yeah, and you're fully conscious. You're just like you are here, but it's almost like you're switching channels and you lose it all. But if you've ever had a flying dream or anything that's like, I really felt like I was there,
Oh
or you visited
yes,
someone.
I've done that, and it's a exhilarating thing when you suddenly are flying. And the thing that always happens when that happens to me is I'm thinking, this is so simple. Why have I not always understood how to do this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those, those are, half remembered, perhaps, out of body experiences, or lucid dreams, which is, again, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
But so anyone can do this. It's really a matter of remembering. And that's the first step you really want to do, and waking up in the dream. And here's a real trick. And
Mhm.
this is not part of the whole process of, relaxing and visualizations. This is something you can do during your waking day.
Okay.
And it's very effective. Because here's the thing, we're basically asleep for 1/3 of our lives.
Right.
And we're out there in the astral planes and we're not fully clicking to it. It's so real. People think they're awake. And they're like, well, I'm on the physical world and I'm doing this and that.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is while you're awake, you want to do what's called critical reflection or reality testing. Look around and ask yourself, could this possibly be a dream? Could I possibly be out of body?
Uh-huh.
And this feels so ridiculous because as you're awake and you're at work or, doing whatever you do, you're like, I know I'm not. I'm not asleep. That's ridiculous. But no, you have to really seriously consider this. And how you do it is you look around and see, are there any inconsistencies? Is my driveway facing the right way? Is my furniture right? Are the people I'm around the people I'm normally around? We really want to sort of develop the habit of asking, who am I with? What am I doing? Where have I just been? Try to really kind of be present in the moment.
Yeah, really,
Look
really,
and,
really intentionally think about it.
right. Like think, what did I have for breakfast yesterday? Try to develop your memory and to really try to keep track of where you've been and where you're at. And look around and see if there's anything that's out of place, anything that doesn't quite fit reality. Because if you look at your dreams, you'll see that almost always there's what I would call a cue, an inconsistency.
Yes.
And I think this is honestly designed to help people become lucid in the dream state, wake up. Because suddenly, I remember one for me, I'm walking along and I pick up a penny. I'm like, oh, look, it's a bicentennial penny. I didn't know they made those.
Yeah.
And it didn't even dawn on me. Or I'll see a famous person.
Oh, because they don't make those, in other words. And so the fact
right.
is that was and I think you've talked about maybe your higher self that is sending you these out of place things to kind of say, hey, buddy, this is a dream and I want you to be aware of it because that means it's a lucid dream and that means you could potentially travel and that type of thing, right?
Right. It's your part of you trying to wake yourself up to say, listen, look at where you are.
Right.
And a much easier way of doing this. That's important. Just pay attention is what I'm telling people. Look at your environment very carefully, but you can test it. And one way of doing that is trying to fly.
Oh, I like
that.
This
is kind of ridiculous, but
no, I like it.
And, maybe you can't do this at work, but you can.
Yeah. Close your door. Yeah.
I'll just give a little hop, or as you're walking along, just kind of jump and see if you can fly. No, don't jump off a cliff.
Right. You don't want to do this at the edge of a building or a cliff. No.
No.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you saying that.
Do this safely.
Yeah.
But or try to stick your finger through a wall or your desk or your chair. And you're like, of course it doesn't go through, right? And another way is you can like pull on your finger and see if it stretches.
Ooh.
Or because your astral body does this. So these are 3 ways of sort of testing reality.
Right.
And it's so funny when this happens. It's such a riot and such a shock because you'll be at work and you're like, gosh, I want to go home, and you're looking at the clock.
Yeah.
And then you remember, oh gosh, let me do this reality testing. I know I'm awake, but I'll do it anyway. And you stand up and you jump and you float right to the ceiling.
And then
and you're like, oh my God, I'm not at work.
Oh, okay. And I guess the challenge then is to not, because you're so exhilarated, just fly right back into your body, it seems to me like, because I know that it seems like, if I understand, that too much of an emotion can do that.
Yeah, which is why it's not really dangerous, because if you get all fearful, whoosh, you're back in. What'll probably happen is you'll stick your finger and it goes right through the wall. You're like, oh my God. and you're completely shocked because you thought you were, at a friend's house or something.
Yeah.
And the environment around you dissolves, and really, you're floating above your bed, most likely. Though you might find yourself full on in the astral planes, in this beautiful environment. Or, one of the slightly lower realms, which is essentially the same as Earth.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it'll be a huge shock and so much fun.
It sounds like it. And that kind of scenario sounds like it's one where it's happening without you having intended it to, by going through any kind of a routine, for instance. You know, because you're like, okay, I'm going to test that now and see. And oh my gosh, I am out of my body. For those who want to
Yeah.
try to trigger it and make it happen, it sounds like it starts with, you said, well, you tell me. I mean, let's say a person wants to try to learn how to do this, that's listening. That starts with, it sounds like a kind of a meditative or calm state, maybe when you're laying in bed, or how would you kind of describe the way to do it?
Yeah. Well, that's definitely a method, and this is harder for beginners, which is why I wanted to say that other method first,
Okay.
because honestly, it's a lot easier if you just suddenly wake up and you're out of body. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because people think, oh, well, to get out of body, I need to relax and go through this whole process of lifting out.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can absolutely do this, but it's a little easier the other way.
Which way do
You
you
don't.
do now? Do you just find yourself in it by testing, or do you just feel it somehow?
Now I can relax to the point. I do it the way that, you know, well, here's how
Okay.
I just relax to the point where I start to feel the vibratory state.
Mm.
And even that, it's not, because it's very dramatic in the beginning. You're feeling all this like shaking and vibrating and the energy of the next dimension. But now I can just kind of relax and slide out when I'm good at it and things are going well and I'm not distracted and overwhelmed with life, and
Yeah.
trying to make money and
Yeah, right.
you know
Thank you. That's true.
and
That's
deal
we
with
all deal with that, right?
the house needs fixing and
The car
there's all the
alternator isn't working. That
chores.
happened to me earlier in the week. Good luck trying to lay there and go out of body for that. But
There's a lot of literature on this and you can read it, but I've basically broken it down into simple steps.
perfect. Perfect. I love it. I tell you what, Preston, hold that thought if you would, though, because we're going to go ahead and conclude this episode, which is part 1 of my talk with Preston. And we will resume part 2 in the next episode, visiting about these steps that you would want to take if you want to experience an out-of-body experience. And in the meantime, I would invite you, as always, to contact me directly at kevinkelly@midnightontheprairie.com. Now, we also have a Patreon page that we're still going to be adding a lot of things to, but right now you can access that by becoming a Beyond the Curtain member of Midnight on the Prairie. How do you do it? Simply go to midnightontheprairie.com and click where it says Beyond the Curtain Access. As a paying member of Midnight on the Prairie, you will have access to bonus content, which we're going to be adding a lot over time. But right now, you will be able to see video interviews of not only Preston Dennett, but of Toby Evans, who I interviewed earlier this season about her work as a soul guide. And here's the thing, my friends. By becoming a Beyond the Curtain member of Midnight on the Prairie, you will help ensure that I can continue this podcast into a second season and beyond. So it's very important to me, and I would very much appreciate it. You can also go to patreon.com/Midnight on the Prairie. All right. It's time for me to remind you once again that no matter where you are in space and time, here it is always midnight on the prairie.